Hi, mystery writers. It's right, a killer mystery. I'm Zara Altair, and this is where we learn to make a good mystery great. And today I want to talk about how to make your supporting characters come alive. First, I want to thank my supporters on Patreon, and if you're enjoying these and learning from this series, I would certainly appreciate your support. There's a link in the description below. Okay, how about all those supporting characters in your story? You pretty much got your protagonist nailed. What about all the other characters in your story? Supporting characters make a compelling backdrop to your protagonist's story arc. He or she is necessary to the story because they reveal key details, they motivate the protagonist, they foil the protagonist, they help define the story's setting and culture. So each supporting character requires a character arc, a strong point of view, and distinctive personality traits. Strong supporting characters grow and change in the story. Characters that readers recognize from their own life add dimension and reality to your story. So supporting characters need to be dynamic and engaging to your reader. They can't be just stick characters. So the first thing you need to know about your supporting characters is their role in the story. They expand your story by interacting with your protagonist. And in a mystery, supporting characters can be a sidekick, a mentor, a love interest, and these characters expand your reader's knowledge and understanding of your protagonist, highlighting their strengths and weaknesses, and they show your reader how your main character thinks, feels, and reacts in a variety of situations. And they help set up tension when your main character meets an obstacle, because your reader already knows a lot about your main character and they're like, oh, I think I know what he or she is going to do in this situation. And of course you can surprise them by bringing out something else about your protagonist. But that really is an important part of supporting characters, is bringing to light the traits and personality of your protagonist. And of course, in a mystery, the role of the suspects is to create and fill out the puzzle pieces of the mystery. So each suspect, including the villain, had a unique relationship with the victim. And as your sleuth interacts with the suspects, they find clues and red herrings, as well as learning more about the victim's relationships with other people. And the victim is the story fulcrum. Without the victim's death, there'd be no mystery. I've talked about this before. So knowing the connections your victim has with the supporting characters is key to building your mystery puzzle and the tension to keep your readers engaged. So first of all of a sudden you're expanding from your protagonist. So you want to organize your characters. You need to keep track of them all. Author Margaret Atwood creates a chart with birth date and historical events, fictional or real, for each character. So creating a character Bible will help you keep track of each character and their relationship in the story. Some authors use traditional 3-ring binder with loose leaf paper and divider tabs, a tab for each character. And they create each character background and handwritten notes, adding details later as needed, and keep the binder on their desk for quick reference. Another option is to create similar character files in writing software like a Microsoft Word or Google Docs, so you can quickly access your characters by creating an index. So that's another way. An index in Word or table of contents in Docs where you can highlight and quickly go to each of the characters when you want a reference point. Also, writing software like Scrivener, Ulysses, and the planning software Plotter and others have ways to create and store your list of characters with all their attributes and traits. So the important thing with your supporting characters is rounding out their background details, and that's what adds dimension to them and to the story. But what it does is it makes them feel human to the reader. You want those details for the reader, and you want those details for every one of your supporting characters. And the more your supporting characters feel human, in other words, they're three-dimensional, you've really fleshed out who they are, how they talk, how they act, the more your reader relates to those characters. So a character Bible helps you create your characters, store them. It also helps you keep from creating extra characters who share the same role, and you keep your readers focused on the story instead of being confused by too many characters. So, what are some essentials that you need to know about your secondary characters? You want to know how they interact with the world and with other characters. So give them hobbies, histories, opinions, quirks, obsessions, and speech patterns unique to that particular character. Start by listing all your characters, and you'll spend most of your time working on the main character, but make sure you include every character. And what I like to do in my character Bible is to list their story role. How does this particular character contribute to the story? And this is especially helpful for minor characters who appear briefly several chapters apart. You'll be able to reference their details as you write without trying to remember whether the scar was on the left or right side of their face. I really believe that the character's role in the story is the most important thing that you need to focus on when you're setting up your characters. The primary aspect of secondary characters is their role in the story. It's their context. It's how they fit in the story. The character serves a role in moving the story forward. So essentially, the context works in two ways, and you want to know this about your supporting characters. How the character relates to each of the other characters, and how they fit in the framework of the story. And I think if you address each of those issues for your characters, you really have a good grasp of where they can appear in the story, where they should appear in the story, where they should not appear in the story. So if you know the character's context from the beginning, it'll help you avoid some common character malfunctions in the story. Character context makes your story cohesive from start to finish. So think about that first. Don't worry about their hair color so much, because it's their role in the story that's really important. So how do you bring them to life? And that's going to be their habits and their mannerisms. Those are the things that help readers connect with those characters. You want vivid and realistic behavior that pulls your reader into the story. A shy character may look down at the ground or turn their head away when speaking. A good method for getting in touch with your character is to walk through a typical day. What are their work habits? What are their meals? What are their recreation? Who are their friends? Just have a good idea of who that character is. Also, I think very important when you're writing is you want to have a list of speech patterns so that when you're writing dialogue, you have a good grasp of how that character speaks, what they say, little phrases they use, any kind of hesitation they might have in their speech, or if they just run on blabbermouth, their favorite sayings, because these help distinguish them as individuals. All right. You want to know their interpersonal relationships and connections with the other characters in the story. And in a mystery, of course, you want to know how they related to the victim. So how a character reacts to other characters reveals their personality. And it's just like, when you meet people, and how they conduct themselves out in the world gives you lots of clues about them. And it's the same with your supporting characters. They may pat someone on the back or cross the street to avoid meeting them. You're giving your reader clues about that character. For example, if your main character speaks kindly to their neighbor in person and then gossips about them behind their back, it tells readers something about that character's trustworthiness. You want to have a good grasp, too, of their relationships, like their family, their uncle, their parent, their child, their work connections, their friends, their enemies. And these are all going to change, of course, according to your story. But you want a good grasp of how that character fits in the world, and who's in their family, who their friends are, and you want to know who supports them and who doesn't, because you can use these details in dialogue and action to reveal your characters to your reader. Another thing you want to know about your supporting characters is their conflict response. How do they normally respond to conflict whenever they meet trouble? Because your novel's built on conflict, and you'll be throwing many plot elements to thwart your characters' plans, and that includes your supporting characters. So introduce your reader to the normal responses early on, and then put those same characters in a situation where the normal response doesn't work. That adds more detail and more connection for your reader. This works for antagonists, it works for opponents, it works for love interests. So spend some time with this because conflict keeps your readers reading. And of course you want to know a little bit about their history. Every character enters your story with a history, what's called their backstory. They don't enter as a blank slate, and you need to know enough about their backstory to present them as a total person in your current story, because your characters fill their lives with large and small incidents that impact how they behave and react in the story. So you may not use this actually in the writing of your story, but if you do this character work before you write the story, it helps you connect with the character and understand their motivations. So if you create vivid and impactful backstories, you can hint at events early in the story and then expand on the impact later. You're always going to write more in your character Bible than you use in the story itself. But as the story progresses, you aren't going to know which details you actually want to use until you're writing the story. So the more that you know about your characters, the better able you are to cherry pick the exact detail about that character that fits in a particular scene. And of course, you need physical details, so the reader has at least a hint of how that character appears in the story. Many writers, including myself, do not spend a lot of time with physical details, because if you hint at the physical details, that lets the reader engage in the story and create a picture of that character in their mind. So, but you want to know what those physical details are. For the same reason I just mentioned, you pick out the details that fit in a particular scene. You don't want the scene where the character looks in the mirror and sees their hair and their face and their nose and, all that stuff. But you do want things like when a character towers over another character, or the love interest may place his hand on her tiny brown hand. You just want those little tiny details. So you need to know enough about their physical characteristics to bring them in when necessary. You want to list those physical details in the character Bible. This is where you store all this stuff, so that they're at hand when you need them. In your story, you can sprinkle those details in rather than giving the whole long list like the character standing in front of the mirror. So characters who support your story, when you have the details of the supporting characters' characteristics, their mannerisms, their attitude, they become three-dimensional and human to your reader, and that's what you want. That's what keeps readers reading. In other words, they come alive. So knowing your character has red hair is less important than how the character works in your story. You can change a shy girl to an aggressive girl, and she may still have the same story role, like sidekick. So as long as you know the context of a character, you can play with traits and aspects, but their function in the story remains the same. That is what you want to know, and that is what must remain consistent throughout your story. And as your characters interact in your story, they expand your reader's experience of the main character and enliven your story. So that's mainly what I wanted to have today. And if you're interested in writing a mystery and want some help along the way, my course, Write a Killer Mystery, takes you from the very beginning to the end and every step along the way, including creating a character Bible and planning your story and how to deal with clues and red herrings. So check out the link below. Thank you, and keep writing.